Halo Combat Evolved has turned 20 years old recently. Originally released on November 15th, 2001 as a launch title for the Xbox. Halo was the game that put Xbox on the map, and it had to be. The Xbox launched with a laundry list of titles, and like most console launches, the main lineup was, at best, mediocre. Out of 17 launch titles in North America, 9 of them were sports or racing titles. One of them was Shrek, and another one was Halo. The Xbox needed a system seller. Going up against Nintendo and Sony, who were both very well established, Nintendo with its long history, and Sony after they hit the ground running with the PlayStation 1 in 1994. The Xbox had to have something to pull people away from buying the GameCube or the PS2. Microsoft needed an answer to Mario, to Zelda, to Resident Evil and Final Fantasy. That system seller would be Halo Combat Evolved, given to us by the grace of our Lord Bungie. But Bungie didn't just give us a reason to buy the Xbox. Bungie gave us a first-person shooter that not only hit the ground running as a console experience, but started an outright revolution in the console FPS space. Halo includes an epic 10-level campaign featuring first-person action and third-person vehicle combat across varied environments. From tight hallways to wide-open canyons, explore the mysterious ring world and unlock its secret. Experience a robust multiplayer mode with up to 16 of your closest friends.
All enemies. All that wrapped up in an epic sci-fi story that's so freaky! Whoa! It makes me shake just thinking about it. Halo Combat Evolved. Buy one. Heck, buy two. That's an order, soldier!
In this series of videos, I'm going to explore the history and development of Halo, the release of the game, the re-releases of the game, and what made Halo start that revolution in the genre. And at the end, I'm going to see if I can look past my rose-tinted glasses and determine if this game holds up today. My name is Dustin, and this is Fashionably Late, how Halo Combat evolved combat on the console. Halo and Bungie both have a very interesting development history. Bungie, at the time, was primarily a company that developed games for the Macintosh. Games such as Marathon, Myth, and Pathways into Darkness were the most well-known before the big boy himself, John Halo. The story of Halo's development begins in the year 1997, after the release of Myth, The Fallen Lords. Halo initially had 2 development codenames, Armor and Monkey Nuts. Monkey Nuts would not stay around for long, and Blam was coined instead because Jason Jones could not bring himself to say the name in front of his mother. Footage of the RTS and third-person builds of this game would not be shown for many years, when several Bungie developers reminisced over the pre-Xbox builds of the game. It's worth noting that at this time, Bungie had 2 active studios. Bungie East was the original Bungie software studio and was located in Chicago, Illinois. Bungie West was a satellite studio located in San Jose, California, and operated from 1997 to 2001. The only game released by Bungie West was Oni, which was released on Mac, Windows, and PlayStation 2 in January of 2001. This game has no connections to the Halo universe. After the RTS stage, Bungie briefly explored making Halo an RPG. There's basically nothing known about this stage of development, or even if it was in development. And the only thing we have to go on from this is a single line from Jason Jones in Bungie's vidoc, O Brave New World. Around August of 1998, Halo had already made the switch to a third-person camera perspective. Shikai Wong saw this build of the game when he went to interview for and eventually joined Bungie. There has been a long-told tale around Halo's name. The staff at Bungie could not agree on a name for the game, to the extent that Jamie Griesmer recalled that Bungie had hired a branding company to assist them in coming up with the name. Bungie had taken ideas from everyone, and had written them down to compare with each other. Names that ranged from Covenant, provided by the aforementioned branding company, Pulse, Hard Vacuum, Resonance, and many more. Paul Russell, a name that you will hear more about throughout this series of videos, wrote down one 4-letter word: Halo. As names slowly got crossed off of the list, Halo was the one name that remained. There are conflicting stories on the naming of Halo. The most common folktale surrounding the name of Halo is that there was a whiteboard that people would walk up to, add names, and cross off names. However, in December of 2021, Paul Russell clarified that every employee had a 2-page handout with the names written down. In 1999, Peter Tampt joined Bungie as executive vice president. Tampt was interested in helping a growing company out. Bungie was in desperate need of cash flow due to a bug that shipped with the Windows version of Myth 2, causing them to recall copies for an emergency patch. Tampt also presumably facilitated a deal with Take-Two Interactive, who would own 20% of Bungie. There are some key players that I need to list out in these events. The first is Alex Seropian, the founder of Bungie and the executive producer of Halo. Jason Jones was the co-founder of Bungie. He partnered with Seropian in 1992 and was the project lead for Halo. Joseph Staten was the director of cinematics for Halo. He joined Bungie in 1998 as the product manager for Myth 2. Martin O'Donnell, also known as Marty, was the audio lead on Halo. He worked with Bungie from 1997 to 1999, where he officially joined. Michael Salvatore was a composer and longtime writing and business partner of Marty. Peter Tampt was the executive vice president of Bungie from 1999 to 2001. Marcus Leto was the art director for Halo. He first worked with Bungie in 1996 on Myth, and is widely regarded as the father of Halo. Max Hoberman was the user interface lead for Halo. He joined Bungie in 1997. He was the Xbox Live lead for Halo 2 and the founder of Certain Affinity. Nathan Bittner was a producer and creative developer. He was the author of the Cortana letters that were sent out to the Bungie community prior to the game's official unveiling. The late Steve Jobs was the co-founder of Apple and CEO at the time of Halo's development. The majority of this information was gained from 2 sources: a Medium article written by Andrew G. and The Complete Untold History of Halo, written by Steve Hosk of Vice. Links in the description. Jason Jones and the heads at Bungie knew that since Halo was going to be their biggest game yet, they needed to get on a big stage to tell people about it. Bungie set their sights on Macworld, a trade show focused on the Apple Macintosh, and famously a place where Steve Jobs would announce new products from the company. If Bungie wanted to get up on the stage with such a big guy as Steve Jobs, they would really need to wow him. How does a relatively small, independent game developer and publisher get an audience with the CEO of a computer manufacturer? Bungie needed an in, and they had one. Peter Tampt's role previous to Bungie was at Apple, and he was able to open the pearly gates to an audience with Jobs. Peter Tampt is quoted as saying, "Another thing that I did right after joining Bungie was call my old boss at Apple and asked him to be the one, basically to introduce Halo to the world. That was Steve." Early in July of 1999, Jason Jones, Joseph Staten, and Peter Tampt would make the trek out to Cupertino to present in front of Jobs. Jones was going to talk Jobs through the demo. Staten was, in his own words, just there in case the demo didn't work. Jones pointed out the sun was shining in the demo with the lens flare present. Jobs stopped the demo and referenced that at Pixar, they were able to render dozens of suns. Jones immediately rebutted, "Yeah, but can you do it in real time?" From that moment on, Jobs was convinced and Bungie was in. At E3 1999 in May, Bungie was showing off Myth 2, Chimera, and Oni at their booth. However, there were rumors that Bungie had something much bigger and much more exciting in the works. You could see speculation on this throughout the Marathon community in the Cortana letters section, which we'll cover later. Here are a couple of quotes from journalists who were present at this E3. "When I was walking the halls of E3 this year for games business, I kept hearing my fellow journalists chatter about a monumental title that was shown behind the most closed of doors at the Bungie booth. Cool cats and cooler kids were bursting at the seams about the mysterious title that blew away the competition, and this included press that had seen Black and White and Freelancer. Vincent Lopez, IGN. A strict non-disclosure agreement prevented the press from breaking the news, but the game they saw there was unquestionably one of the most thrilling surprises of the show. The game is Halo, and our first look at it blew our minds. Halo had us on the edge of our seats. It might well be the next huge advance in multiplayer action games. Daniel Morris, PC Gamer. Halo was first shown to the public on July 21st, 1999, at Macworld Expo, New York. Jason Jones, the co-founder of Bungie, was introduced by Steve Jobs himself.
We are starting to see some great games come back to the Mac, but this is one of the coolest I've ever seen. This game is going to ship early next year from Bungie, and this is the first time anybody has ever seen it. It's the first time they've debuted it. And so I'm very happy to welcome on the stage Jason Jones, who is the co-founder of Bungie and the Halo project lead. Halo is the name of this game, and we're going to see, for the first time, Halo. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks, Steve. Yep. Everything you're about to see is being rendered in real time on a Macintosh using OpenGL.
Even 2 years before launch, Halo clearly had its most iconic elements set in stone. Purple space aliens, cool green cyborg, land and air vehicles, and mainstay weapons like the energy sword and plasma rifle. Halo's skeleton was in place at this point of development, But this was very different from the final product. Going off of the PC Gamer article from earlier, Halo was focused on human versus Covenant team multiplayer. A very important aspect of this iteration of the game is that the terrain was meant to become deformed in real time. Craters would be made from tank shells and grenade explosions. Bullet casings would remain on the battlefield and even float away in the water. There was a dynamic weather system present that would have changed the lighting as well. Weather changing the physics seems likely, but I was unable to find any confirmation of that. In January of 2000, Take-Two invited many of its developers to a presentation where Microsoft was demonstrating the Xbox for the first time. This presentation led to talks between Peter Tamt and Ed Fries about Microsoft acquiring Bungie. A day or two after the Xbox presentation, Tamt called Fries, and he sent a team out to Chicago to play the game. Microsoft liked what they saw, and Ed Fries wanted both Bungie and Halo. After some legal mumbo-jumbo, a deal was worked out in which Take-Two would retain the rights to Oni, a game in development by Bungie West as well as Myth. Microsoft would get the Bungie staff and Halo. Here's what Ed Fries had to say about this specifically. I really only cared about Halo and Bungie's people. The team would move from Chicago to Seattle, and Bungie West in San Jose would finish and ship Oni and move up to join everyone else. The exact timeline of these events is unclear, but the Microsoft team demoed Halo in early 2000, and Bungie would be acquired on June 19, 2000. After the acquisition, Halo would not stay a third-person game for long. Bungie prototyped the third-person perspective on the Xbox, but quickly came to the decision to move to first-person. Marcus Letos said of this, "In order to actually feel like you were firing a gun, to have that connection now that you had a controller in your hand, it had to be first-person. It felt too distant and separated in third-person." This started a hectic development cycle, in which Bungie had around a year and a half to make the Halo that we know today. In the words of Joe Staten, "It wasn't until after we went to E3 2000, which was right around the time Microsoft got interested in us, that it started to sink in that, holy shit, we've got to make a game now." Jamie Griesemer was at the helm of Halo's controls on the Xbox, and we'll go into further detail on that later in the series. Bungie staff made the move from Chicago to Seattle, going from an independent, open office to a corporate hellscape. This caused a strained relationship with their new owners that Bungie employees were not hesitant to comment on. Here's some quotes of various Bungie and Microsoft employees. "We started out in a cubicle nightmarescape." Jamie Griesemer. "I had a whole wing of the Millennium campus set up for Bungie. I took them on a tour and they hated it. And they said, 'We don't want this, we want cubes.' To Bungie, it was about this open, collaborative working environment, which I understood eventually, so we had to go and tear out all the walls." Ed Fries. "Millennium was absolutely the most Microsoft-looking place you could be in." Marty O'Donnell. "It was a bunker. We'd all be working our asses off, and somebody from another part of the company would bring their kid through our space to look at what was going on, like it was a zoo or something. It got a little antagonistic, to the point where we would tow Microsoft employees out of our parking lot." Jamie Griesemer. "With Bungie, we said, we're not going to fuck with you. We're not going to fuck with your titles. We're not going to fuck with your internal organization structure." Alex remained head of Bungie and everyone still reported to him. Stuart Mulder. "So we got kind of territorial, where a Microsoft keycard wouldn't give you access to Bungie." Jamie Griesemer. "Microsoft brought in a marketing firm who wanted to present to the top brass at Bungie. The only people that were willing to go were Marty O'Donnell and Jamie Griesemer. The firm strongly suggested that Bungie change the name of the game, which caused Marty and Jamie to burst out laughing. After months of back and forth, the firm suggested a subtitle to the game, and suggested Combat Evolved. Bungie thought that was dumb. Jamie called the subtitle the stupidest thing ever. From then on, Bungie had to build Halo's campaign. They came up with different alien species for the Covenant over the course of a few weeks. Marcus Leto recalled writing out the missions on index cards and pinning them to a board. With around 40 cards, Marcus knew that they were not going to be able to build out all of them. What followed was a feverish crunch. Bungie built the campaign, cut levels, and Joe Staten would come in to duct tape the story back together. The audio team of Marty O'Donnell and Jay Wineland had 3 days to add sound effects and music to all of the cutscenes. Marty recalled finishing 11 cinematics on the first day, September 10th, 2001. The next morning, everyone at Bungie was already in the office when Marty woke up. We had all gotten to such a fever pitch that we thought we couldn't even lose a day. I went over and made everyone go home. Marty O'Donnell. Multiplayer was nearly cut from the game entirely, as Bungie was having issues fine-tuning the mode until the very end of development. However, this has been disputed recently. A build of Halo, 1749, from August of 2001, leaked online, and it contained a nearly complete multiplayer build. Max Hoberman said, "On Halo, the team just ran out of time and ended up shoehorning it in. It's entirely possible that Bungie had even greater plans for multiplayer at this time, more along the lines of the team matchup from before the switch to Xbox. If you'd like to see a fantastic in-depth analysis of this build, I strongly recommend that you watch the Vengeful Vadim's 2-part series covering it from head to toe." Halo's hectic development would continue on. The game went gold and shipped alongside the Xbox on November 15, 2001. Stuart Mulder said, "You could really feel there was something magical to Halo when Bungie was wrapping it up. In spite of an extremely hectic development cycle, radically shifting from one bitter rival to another, a buyout, and extreme tensions in Washington, Bungie worked a miracle. On November 15, 2001, Microsoft released the Xbox, and Halo alongside it to universal praise. Around 5 months after release, Halo had sold its first 1,000,000 copies. By July 2006, sales had reached 4.2 million copies. Talk to anybody, and they pretty much say without Halo, the first Xbox would have been the only iteration, which I think is probably true. Marty O'Donnell.